Hello. I'm a woman in her 60s who raised 3 children, sent them off to live their own lives, and continues to walk through life with a lot of energy. When I'm working, I'm a big fan of this channel and always keep it on in the background. When customers ask me about the channel, I just smile and say, it's called Story Time. Today, I want to share with you the most shocking and spine-chilling story I've ever experienced, one that I will never forget. I hope you'll listen with a light heart as I tell it. I married a man who had a similar background to mine when I was 22. He worked as an electrician, and I was a waitress at a restaurant. Together, we managed to improve our financial situation little by little. By the time I was 26, we had 3 children, 2 sons and a daughter. We lived a busy life, the 5 of us sharing clothes and enjoying our time together. But one day, my husband was involved in an electrical accident while working, and tragically passed away. The sadness was overwhelming, but what hit me the hardest was the thought of raising 3 kids on my own. It felt like the world was closing in on me. But as a mother, what can I say? We are built to turn the impossible into reality. We are the strongest beings on earth, right? I didn't give up. I continued to work as a waitress for several more years and eventually, with my own hands, managed to open a small restaurant. I started selling street food, tteokbokki, fish cakes, fried snacks, and omelets. To my surprise, the sales were much better than I expected. This success allowed me to provide for my 3 kids and live a comfortable life again. The success of the business wasn't just because of me. It was a blessing from above, and the customers who supported me made it all possible. I couldn't just sit back and enjoy the profits. My conscience wouldn't allow me to do that. Every morning I would go to the market to buy ingredients, and after closing the shop, I started taking leftovers to orphanages. The kids would always tell me how amazing the food was, how it tasted better than the meals they usually had. These words made me feel like I was flying. I spent all day working, standing at the stove, frying fish cakes and making omelets. I didn't mind one bit. The sight of the kids eating their fill and smiling was enough to warm my heart. I visited several orphanages, offering food and support, and I realized that my small efforts were having a positive impact. Although I wasn't known for being particularly beautiful, I had a reputation for being a kind, dependable woman. The children would often come up to me and take my hand. One day, the orphanage teachers even took a group photo with the kids, and another time the kids gave me heartfelt handwritten letters. My 2 sons and daughter were watching all of this and they said, "Mom, you're amazing. We're so proud of you." Hearing those words filled me with pride and warmth. As the years went by, I continued running my food shop and raising my 3 kids, trying to instill good values in them. The oldest seemed naturally inclined toward a military career and eventually joined the army. He got married in his late 20s and settled down. My second son, who had a more reserved personality, went to nursing school and became a steady, reliable nurse at a large hospital. My youngest, my daughter, started working as a kindergarten teacher and later met a wonderful man who became her husband. With all 3 kids on their own paths, I felt it was time for me to move on as well. Running the shop had started to wear me down. Standing over a hot stove for hours on end was no longer as easy as it used to be. My fingers took longer to heal after burns, and the energy I once had just wasn't the same. I decided to close the shop and turn my attention to something else. I had connections with the local market association, and with the savings I'd built up over the years, I secured a small spot at the market. Instead of cooking, I started selling fresh fish, mackerel, Spanish mackerel, and the like. Gone were the bubbling pots of broth. Now my mornings began with the shimmer of silver scales. To my surprise, the fish business went well. It allowed me to save up a modest inheritance to pass down to my kids someday. But my second son stayed busy with his hospital work and never seemed to find time for romance. By his late 30s, he was still single, and although I worried about it from time to time, I decided not to pressure him. After all, health and happiness mattered more than marriage, I thought. Maybe he's just destined to take care of patients rather than start a family, I told myself, trying to find peace in the situation. And then, out of the blue, he brought someone home, a young woman he introduced as the woman he wanted to marry. I was stunned. "Wait a minute, you're getting married?" I asked, not hiding my surprise. "I thought you were too busy with work to even meet anyone." He chuckled and said, "Mom, love can sprout even in the busiest of times. We've been dating for a while now. I guess I never got around to telling you." I was relieved, happy, and curious all at once. I welcomed her with open arms and a bright smile, extending my hand. "It's so nice to meet you. Please take good care of my son," I said, feeling genuine warmth. But she didn't shake my hand. Instead, she wrinkled her nose and turned her head slightly. "Oh, I'm sorry," she said. "I'm just really sensitive to smells and, well," I quickly withdrew my hand, trying not to show any hurt. "Oh, right, I work with fish. Sorry about that. Come in, let me fix you a nice meal," I said, eager to make a good impression. The dinner table was set with the usual dishes I was proud of, including a delicious fish stew. But she didn't touch the fish. "I don't really eat fish," she said, barely picking at the other food. "It's just the smell. It's too strong for me." I felt embarrassed and apologized. "I'm sorry, I should have asked before preparing the meal. Next time, I'll make something different." She brushed it off politely, but I could sense the distance between us. As the days passed, I kept trying to find ways to connect with her. I invited her to spend time together, offered to take her out for some self-care, and even tried sending thoughtful messages. But each time, she declined. "Sorry, I'm too busy," she'd say, her tone always polite but cool. I began to feel like an outsider, like I wasn't truly welcome in her life. It was difficult, but I decided not to push. "She'll come around with time," I told myself. "She just needs space." Eventually, it was time for the formal family meeting with her parents. I dressed my best and tried to stay optimistic, even though I was nervous. But once again, the topic of fish came up. When the server brought out a beautiful platter of grilled mackerel, I couldn't help but notice her slight grimace. She leaned over to me and whispered, "I really can't stand fish. It's not just the smell. It makes me feel sick." I tried to laugh it off, telling her I'd eat her portion and that there was no need to worry. But deep down, it stung a little. I couldn't help but wonder if my livelihood, my connection to fish, was going to be an ongoing barrier between us. Still, I kept my composure, smiled through it, and hoped that over time, things would get easier. The meeting went well enough, but the underlying tension remained. I continued to hope that once she saw how much I cared for my son and how willing I was to make adjustments, she might start to see me in a different light. I told myself to be patient, to let things unfold naturally, and to never give up on building a warm relationship. After all, family ties are worth the effort, and I was determined to give it my all. Not long after the meeting, my son announced their wedding date. My heart swelled with excitement and a little apprehension. For the occasion, I decided to wear the same handbook I had worn to my oldest son's and my daughter's weddings. It was a special piece of clothing, steeped in memories of days gone by. As I slipped it on, I felt a rush of emotions, pride, nostalgia, and a sense of bittersweet joy. My son would soon start a new chapter, and I wanted to support him wholeheartedly, even if there were still some unresolved feelings with his bride-to-be. The day of the wedding arrived. My son, dressed in a sharp tuxedo, looked so grown up, so ready to take on the world. Watching him walk down the aisle, I couldn't help but cry. My tears weren't just of happiness. They were a complex mix of gratitude for the wonderful person he had become and a lingering doubt that I hadn't done enough to prepare him for life's challenges. But as the ceremony unfolded, and I saw the love in his eyes as he exchanged vows, I knew I could put those doubts aside. He had found his path, and I was incredibly proud. After the wedding, my son and his wife went on their honeymoon, and I found myself with a little more time on my hands. I thought about ways to make peace with my new daughter-in-law, to show her I genuinely cared. She had once said she wanted a more minimal, natural diet, so I spent some time preparing a simple gift of homemade side dishes. Nothing too fancy, just a heartfelt gesture. When they returned from their trip, I delivered the package to their home, hoping it would help bridge the gap. However, when I offered the food, she declined again. "Oh, thank you, but my mom's already stocked our fridge. We really don't need more food," she said with a polite but firm tone. I smiled and told her it was no problem, but inside I felt a familiar pang of rejection. Still, I refused to let it bring me down. I decided to try a different approach, giving her space and waiting for her to come to me. Relationships take time, I reminded myself, and it wasn't worth forcing anything. As the months went by, their life together seemed happy and busy. I saw them occasionally, but it was clear that their new life was consuming most of their time and energy. I respected that. My son worked long hours at the hospital, and she was always on the go. I focused on my own routine, tending to the market stall and enjoying the quiet evenings at home. There were days when I missed them, but I trusted that, in time, things would improve. Then, one day, I got the phone call I'd been waiting for. "Mom, we've got some great news. She's pregnant." My heart leaped with joy. "Really? Already? Oh, that's wonderful," I exclaimed, feeling like I might burst with happiness. "I've been waiting for a grandchild for so long. This is the best news I've heard all year." I thanked them both profusely and began making plans to visit them. "Mom, why don't you come over this weekend? We'd love to see you," my son said. I could hear the warmth in his voice, and it made me feel like everything was finally falling into place. When I visited, I brought a carefully chosen selection of groceries and a few small gifts for the baby. I wanted to make a good impression, to show that I could be a supportive and helpful grandmother. They welcomed me inside, and for the first time, I felt a real sense of inclusion. We talked about the baby, about the nursery they were preparing, and about how she was feeling. Although she was still reserved, I noticed a subtle change in her demeanor. She seemed more open, even if just slightly. Over the next several months, I tried to be present but not overbearing. I offered to help when needed, always careful not to step on toes. When the baby was born, I was ecstatic. "Mom, you have a grandson," my son told me over the phone, his voice filled with pride. "A grandson? Oh, I can't wait to meet him," I said, holding back tears of joy. I visited them soon after, bearing gifts and my heartfelt congratulations. Holding my grandson for the first time was a moment I'll never forget. He was perfect, and I felt an overwhelming love that I hadn't felt in years. Watching my son take on his new role as a father was a proud moment for me. He was gentle and attentive, always ready to learn and do his best. And as the weeks went by, I noticed that even my daughter-in-law started to soften a little. She would smile more, invite me over for short visits, and even ask me for advice on small things. It wasn't a dramatic change, but it was a step in the right direction. The baby's first birthday was approaching, and I was determined to make it special. I started planning my gift weeks in advance, choosing a lovely outfit and a few meaningful keepsakes. I wanted to give them something memorable, something that showed how much I cared. And when the day came, I arrived early, ready to celebrate with the family. The party was wonderful, filled with laughter, warm wishes, and delicious food. My grandson was the center of attention, surrounded by people who loved him dearly. I felt like the whole family had finally come together, and it was a moment I would treasure forever. As the months passed after my grandson's first birthday, our family dynamic continued to evolve. While things weren't perfect, I could tell there was a gradual thaw in my relationship with my daughter-in-law. She was no longer as distant, and occasionally she would even reach out to me, asking for advice or simply sharing a brief moment of conversation. I took these small gestures as victories. I knew better than to push. After all, trust and comfort take time to build. My son, busy as ever, tried his best to be the bridge between us. He would casually mention that she appreciated the way I helped out, or that she had commented on how much the baby enjoyed the toys I'd brought over. These little affirmations gave me hope and strengthened my resolve to keep my approach gentle and patient. The first few times I was allowed to watch my grandson alone, I felt a mix of excitement and nervousness. I wanted everything to go perfectly, not just because I loved spending time with him, but also because I saw it as an opportunity to show his mother that I could be trusted. So I put my all into it, carefully preparing meals that he would enjoy, planning fun activities, and making sure he was always safe and happy. My grandson's laughter was the greatest reward. He had such a contagious giggle, the kind that could make even the hardest days seem brighter. Each time he reached for me with his tiny hands or babbled excitedly about something he saw, my heart swelled. In those moments, I felt truly connected to him, and by extension, a stronger connection to my son's growing family. It wasn't long before my daughter-in-law began to notice how well things were going. She started to drop hints that maybe I could watch him more often. "Would you mind keeping an eye on him for a couple of hours while I run errands?" she asked one day. I agreed immediately, trying not to sound too eager. As these visits became more frequent, I could tell she was starting to see me as a dependable presence in their lives. One evening, as we were cleaning up after dinner, she turned to me and said, "You know, I'm really glad you're here. It's good for him to have his grandmother around." Her words, though simple, were monumental to me. They were a sign that I was no longer just the mother-in-law or the fish seller in her eyes. I was becoming a valued member of her family. My son, ever the peacemaker, often reminded me not to dwell on the past. "Mom, you've done so much for us. Don't worry about old misunderstandings. What matters is how we move forward," he said. His words gave me strength. I realized that while we couldn't erase the rocky start, we could certainly create a better future together. The more time I spent with my grandson, the more I noticed how he brought out the best in all of us. His energy and curiosity seemed to mend rifts in ways that words never could. Even my daughter-in-law began to open up more, sharing stories from her childhood and asking me about mine. Through these conversations, I started to understand her better. She had faced challenges that I couldn't have imagined, and many of her earlier behaviors began to make sense. There were still moments of awkwardness, little miscommunications, and cultural differences that occasionally surfaced, but they felt smaller now, less significant. We had all come to recognize that we were, ultimately, on the same team. We all wanted the best for the baby, for the family, and for each other. By the time my grandson turned 2, the atmosphere in the family had shifted entirely. What once felt like an uneasy truce had turned into genuine camaraderie. I was invited to more family gatherings, included in more decisions, and treated with more respect. I could see that my son's wife was making an effort, just as I was, and it made all the difference. When she would ask for my help or share a laugh with me, it felt like the years of tension were finally melting away. And so, we continued to build our lives together, slowly, thoughtfully, and with the kind of care that only comes from experience. The love we shared for that little boy created a bond that transcended any lingering differences. I found myself feeling not only accepted, but truly welcomed into their home, into their lives, and into their hearts. As the family grew closer, I began spending more time at my son and daughter-in-law's house. What once felt like cautious visits turned into warm, casual drop-ins. My grandson would run to the door when I arrived, his arms wide open. The sight of his smile, so pure, so full of joy, would always melt my heart. Even my daughter-in-law seemed more at ease. She'd sit with me over tea, sharing updates on their life and asking for advice on everything from meal planning to handling toddler tantrums. At first, I kept my suggestions light, careful not to overstep. But as she became more comfortable, she started asking for more detailed guidance. I could see she was growing to trust me, and that trust was the greatest gift she could give. Over time, our relationship stopped feeling like work. We had inside jokes. We found ourselves laughing about things that, not too long ago, would have caused tension. She began to call me not just mom, but mom, with warmth, with affection. The sound of it was music to my ears. One day, she invited me to stay for dinner without prompting. "We're making kalbi tonight, and I could use your help in the kitchen," she said, a hint of playfulness in her tone. I followed her into the kitchen, where we stood side by side, marinating meat and chopping vegetables. We moved in harmony, trading stories and stealing tastes of the food as we cooked. As we sat around the dinner table, I looked at my family and felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude. My grandson was babbling happily, my son was laughing, and my daughter-in-law was pouring tea with a smile. The atmosphere was light, and the home felt like a place of true belonging. It hadn't always been that way, and I didn't take it for granted. The holidays were the real turning point. My daughter-in-law approached me a few weeks before Christmas and said, "Mom, would you like to come over for the whole weekend? We're decorating the tree, and we'd love for you to be there." "Of course," I replied, hardly able to contain my enthusiasm. When I arrived, the house was buzzing with excitement. Boxes of ornaments were scattered across the living room, and Christmas music played softly in the background. My grandson handed me a tiny glittery ornament and said, "Grandma, this one's for you." I helped him place it on the tree, his small hands guiding mine. It was a simple moment, but it felt like a triumph, a sign that I had truly become part of the family's traditions. That weekend, I helped string lights, bake cookies, and wrap presents. It felt natural, effortless. My daughter-in-law and I shared stories about past holidays, laughing about childhood mishaps and swapping recipes. By the end of the weekend, we were both exhausted but happy. "Thanks for coming, Mom," she said as I was leaving. "It really meant a lot to have you here." "It meant a lot to me too," I said, smiling back at her. "You're making this holiday season so special." Over the years, these moments multiplied. Birthdays, anniversaries, small family gatherings, each one brought us closer together. My grandson started school, and I was there to cheer him on at his first recital. My daughter-in-law called me when she needed help with his homework, or when she just needed someone to talk to after a long day. It wasn't about proving myself anymore. We had both let down our guards, and our relationship became one of mutual respect and genuine affection. One afternoon, while we were sitting on the porch watching my grandson play in the yard, she turned to me and said, "You know, I used to be so nervous around you. I worried you'd judge me or think I wasn't good enough, but now I realize you've been rooting for me all along." Her words took me by surprise. "I've always wanted the best for you," I said, "and I'm so proud of the mother and wife you've become." "I couldn't have done it without you," she replied. "I mean that." Looking back on our journey, I felt a deep sense of fulfillment. The struggles and misunderstandings had only made our bond stronger. We had grown together, healed together, and built a relationship that wasn't just about family by marriage. It was about family by choice. And as I watched my grandson laugh and play, I knew that the love we shared as a family would continue to grow, season after season, year after year. As the years passed, our family dynamic kept evolving in the most unexpected ways. My grandson grew from a curious, babbling toddler into an adventurous, talkative little boy. Each time I visited, he would run to me, his arms outstretched, and give me the warmest hug. "Grandma!" he'd shout as if it had been months since he'd last seen me, even though it was usually only a few days. His enthusiasm never faded, and neither did mine. The relationship with my daughter-in-law, once so strained, now felt natural, even comfortable. We found ourselves spending more time together, not out of obligation, but because we genuinely enjoyed each other's company. Whether it was cooking, taking my grandson to the park, or simply chatting over a cup of coffee, These moments strengthened our bond. She started opening up about her life before marriage, sharing stories I had never heard before. I began to understand her more deeply. Her struggles, her dreams, her fears. That understanding brought us closer than I ever thought possible. One day, she called me out of the blue. "Mom," she said, her voice warm and familiar. "I was thinking, how about we take a family trip? Just the four of us?" "A trip?" I asked, pleasantly surprised. "Yeah, a little getaway. Maybe to the countryside. It could be nice for all of us to spend some time together." I agreed without hesitation. We ended up renting a cozy cabin in a quiet, scenic area. The weekend was filled with laughter, long walks, and shared meals around a big wooden table. We built a bonfire at night and roasted marshmallows, with my grandson insisting that mine were the best because I didn't let them catch fire. It was the kind of experience that leaves you feeling more connected, more appreciative of the people you call family. Over the years, my role in their lives expanded. When my grandson started school, I would help him with his homework whenever I visited. On busy weekdays, my daughter-in-law would call and ask if I could pick him up or watch him for a few hours. I never hesitated. I felt honored to be a trusted part of their everyday lives. Even as my grandson grew older, he still treated me with the same love and excitement. "Grandma," he said one day, "can you come to my soccer game? I want you to see me score a goal." "Of course I'll be there," I replied, my heart swelling. At that game, as I watched him run across the field, his little legs pumping with determination, I couldn't help but smile. He was growing up so fast, yet he still looked for me in the crowd, waving when he spotted me. It reminded me that no matter how much time passed, our bond remained unbreakable. My relationship with my daughter-in-law had transformed as well. She began turning to me not just for advice on family matters, but also for her own personal challenges. "Mom," she said once, "I'm thinking about going back to school for a certification program. I'm a little nervous, but I feel like it's the right step." I encouraged her wholeheartedly. "You've got the dedication and the intelligence. I have no doubt you'll do great." When she graduated from the program, she invited me to the ceremony, making sure I had a front row seat. Seeing her walk across the stage, diploma in hand, brought tears to my eyes. She had come so far, and I was proud to have been there to cheer her on. The holidays also became a time of celebration and reflection. We started our own traditions, decorating the tree together, baking cookies in the shapes of my grandson's favorite animals, and having a big family dinner where everyone shared what they were thankful for. Each year, the holidays felt brighter and more meaningful because we had created a foundation of love and mutual respect. Eventually, my grandson became a teenager. His hugs grew less frequent, and he spent more time with friends, but he still made a point to visit me. "Hey, Grandma," he'd say, giving me a quick squeeze before heading off to play basketball or work on a school project. I missed the days when he was small enough to sit on my lap, but I knew this was just part of life. The important thing was that he still came to me, still valued the relationship we had built. One afternoon, my daughter-in-law and I were sitting in the garden, sipping tea as we watched the sunset. She turned to me and said, "You know, I was scared of you when we first met. I thought you wouldn't like me or that I'd never be good enough for your family." I reached over and squeezed her hand. "You were never anything but good enough. You've become an amazing wife, mother, and daughter to me." She smiled, her eyes glistening. "Thank you. That means more to me than you know." In that moment, I felt the weight of the past lift completely. All the misunderstandings, the hesitations, the doubts, they were gone. What remained was a deep, unshakable bond. She wasn't just my daughter-in-law. She was my daughter, my friend, my family. As the years continued, our family grew, faced challenges, and celebrated victories. Through it all, we stood together. I found joy in the simple things, the laughter at the dinner table, the warmth of a hug, the shared stories that tied us together. I knew that no matter what came next, the love we had cultivated would carry us through. Looking back on it all, I couldn't help but feel immense gratitude. What began as a rocky start had blossomed into a relationship that was richer, stronger, and more meaningful than I ever imagined. I had gained not only a loving family, but also a deep sense of belonging. I was no longer just a visitor in their lives. I was home,